What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Megatherium Club podcast. As always, my name is Sean, and I'm here with my friends Zach and Spencer to talk about some fascinating creatures. Before we get started today, I do want to say Happy Pride Month to everybody, as well as Happy belated National Dinosaur Day. Did either of you two do anything special for the holiday?
I did not, but is it a coincidence that those 2 days start on the same day?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, yeah.
I think it is a happy coincidence, too.
Proud to be a dinosaur.
I was just going to say that. Damn it.
Yes, happy Pride Month. Yeah.
Well, I celebrated it. My wife and I went to Dino Day Fest in Graham, North Carolina, and we got dinosaur posters, and I wore a blow-up raptor outfit for about 5 minutes because I was sweating profusely and needed to take it off. It was very fun, though, so I recommend everybody celebrating if they can. And if you aren't aware, National Dinosaur Day is June 1st, and the exact definition of the holiday varies a bit depending on where you look, but the overall theme is the same. It is a day to celebrate dinosaurs, their wonder and ability to intrigue us, paleontology as a study, and to share the love of these creatures between all ages. It is often a topic that we associate with children, and a lot of people then grow out of, unfortunately, but sometimes we never do, and those are the cool people, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing about Pride Month, too.
That too,
well,
yeah.
The cool person, not the growing out of it. 'Cause that's dumb. But the cool person part, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Today's episode is going to discuss bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is the ability of a living organism to produce and emit light. A variety of organisms can produce light, including marine vertebrates and invertebrates, fungi, microorganisms, and some terrestrial arthropods. This light that we see is a chemical reaction involving luciferin and luciferase reacting with oxygen. The reaction can be red, yellow, green, blue, or even violet. Some of these creatures make their own luciferase and luciferin, while others must eat other bioluminescent organisms to obtain these important molecules. There are also those that have a symbiotic relationship with bioluminescent bacteria that live and feed inside the host, and in return light up or glow when the host needs light. That does sound like a symbiotic relationship to me.
Yeah, it does.
Fits the bill.
Well, now that we're
Just
all
continuing
familiar with
from
we're all familiar
Yeah.
with what that means now. Bioluminescence is important for a variety of reasons, as you will learn this episode, but a few ways this light production can be used include attracting prey, avoiding predators, and communication with others of the same species. Is there anything you guys would like to add to that bioluminescent definition?
No, I think we read the same article.
Nice.
But I think, when a photon is released, isn't it, the electrons just essentially move from a higher energy orbit level to a lower energy, and then when they do that, that extra energy is released as a photon, and that's what creates the actual light. I don't know. Am I way off basis there?
I avoided the chemical talk a little bit.
The physics?
Yeah. I just saw
Okay.
if luciferin and luciferase are in the same presence with oxygen, then you get a light. But it's actually like pretty cool because it's like cool as in low temperature producing light. So it's very efficient, where the light bulbs in your house produce a lot of heat, and almost 90% of that energy is given off as heat instead of light, so it's rather inefficient. Again, nature beats us at being efficient in producing light.
Yeah. I guess before we dive into our specific examples that we're going to talk about today, do you guys remember the first time you saw it?
I don't know if I've ever seen it.
You've never seen bioluminescence?
Nope, never.
Never?
Never in
Growing
my
up
whole
in the
life.
Midwest, that never happened to you once? Didn't go outside at all, ever?
I
in the
haven't been
evenings?
outside in about 30 years.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I remember mine. I guess I don't want to give away your stuff, Sean, because you're talking about some terrestrial bioluminescence.
I'm talking about probably the most common bioluminescence, but that, if we're going to just keep it under an illusion, we'll say I saw it at a very young age, and so I'll let you continue on with your piece.
Well, I wanted to share a fun story about yours, so maybe I'll wait until after you're done to share my story.
Oh, I'll share a cool fact that I found is that bioluminescence occurs in organisms in most ecosystems, except there are no records in freshwater ecosystems. So we have like terrestrial, we have marine, but nothing in freshwater, because most of the time any freshwater that is deep enough where you would need bioluminescence, it's already too murky and that light just wouldn't go anywhere, is kind of the theory that I read. So they've evolved other ways of detecting things in the murky deep.
Right, like catfish and their, electronic scanners.
And their barbels.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the fun fact that I read was that most of the bioluminescence is in the ocean. Go figure. So, I can go first. Sure, why not? I'll dive right in. Get it? Dive right in.
The ocean.
I'm talking about water.
Yeah.
Wait,
into
what?
The water. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you explain that one?
No, I'm not going to.
I didn't get that.
Sorry, Zach. We're moving on. Hey, people in the comments, explain to Zach what I meant.
Yeah, all of the comments that we get.
All the comments we got. Hey, we actually got a comment on our last video on Spotify, so thank you to whoever that was.
A video on Spotify?
Don't know. No, not a video. Each episode has like a little, I don't know, question in the podcast page that's like, what'd you think of this episode? You can customize that, but we haven't customized it really a whole lot. And mainly because I can't remember how to do it. But in the last one, somebody commented and was like, I can't remember exactly what they said. I was looking at it the other day, but they're like, I'm the #1 listener. So I was like, cool.
Hell yeah. Who was it?
Oh man, you're going to really make me ask. I'll look it up and maybe we'll give them a shout out at the end. So, but anyway,
they deserve it.
Let's go into the water. I'm going to be talking about anglerfish. We'll just kind of dive right into that again. Sorry, Zach. Some species of anglerfish live in shallow tropical waters, but the ones that we really care about are the ones that live in the deep, murky depths of the ocean, up to around 16,000 feet. That's so deep into the water. Before I kind of dive into their bioluminescence, because that's only the tip of the iceberg for these creatures, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess, some of their mating behavior. Because if you've never looked at anglerfish mating behavior, it's really weird.
I think it's weird that you're watching.
Well, somebody's got to watch. But really, it's this guy, Ted Peicht. He teaches at the University of Washington. He indicates that we know of about 166 species so far. Other articles say up to 200 species of anglerfish so far. But either way, the consensus is the deeper you go, the bigger they get, which is pretty cool. So the ones at 16,000 feet can be just absolutely massive. And there's two different types, really kind of when you get down to it. They're the benthic ones, the ones that kind of live on the ground, like on the ocean floor. They're very much flattened out. They have large gaping mouths that kind of point upward. And then there are the ones that kind of swim throughout the water column. They're much more flattened kind of from the side to side or laterally. Either way, they have big mouths, they have big sharp teeth, and they all have this characteristic barb that comes out. It's actually the first barb of that dorsal fin that has been modified to kind of be independent and kind of point in another direction, but it can also move in any direction. I'll get into that in a little bit. However, it's female anglerfish that when we think of an anglerfish, it's the females. Most aren't very big, but in the cases where the female is absolutely massive, those 4 feet long anglerfish, the males can just be so much smaller, about 60 times smaller than the length. And I quote, about 500,000 times as small in terms of weight as the female. These things are tiny. And it's because they do this thing called sexual parasitism.
Oh, we learned about that too, didn't we? Parasitism.
Yeah, we did. But this is a different, I mean, it's parasitism, but it's a different type of parasitism underneath that umbrella where they're not necessarily doing it because they're a completely separate species that needs this thing to live. They're the same species that needs this thing to live. So males, when they're born, they have a short amount of time before they have to find a female. And what they do is they'll kind of swim around and they'll look for a female within the dark. But once they find one, they actually bite onto her and they have these tiny little pincher-like teeth and they latch on, and then the two kind of merge together. Like their tissues will like merge and become one, and the males will live off of essentially blood flow into their bodies from the females. And that's how the males live. And once they're attached for the rest of their lives and the females' lives. If they don't get attached fast enough, they will die. Now, this is not every single anglerfish species. This is just a few example species, especially the deep sea ones. Essentially, what happens is the male gets a free host, and the female can use him to mate with at any point that she needs to, because he's always ready to go. It's essentially what this guy was saying.
In the
And
human
a
world,
female-
we call those freeloaders.
We do call them freeloaders. And in fact, a female might actually have one or two or even up to 6 different freeloaders just hanging out, merged with her body. I don't know how she kind of picks which one, but I'm sure it's kind of just, she'll lay some eggs that triggers the males to release sperm. They mix together in the open water. It's just a kind of a mix of a bunch of different males and the one female. But it's really weird. It's really cool. And I thought I would just kind of give that aspect of anglerfish a shout out before I dived into the bioluminescence.
Can you imagine if that's how we reproduce? Like if I just bit my wife's
I mean-
booty hard enough, my mouth just got stuck there, and then I was just there.
I mean, there is something to say about codependency, and some partners just become a little too dependent on the other one. It might not be physically, but emotionally, it's the same. All right, on to light. About 75% of deep sea animals make their own light. Water is clear, but the deeper you go, the less light can pass through it. And at some point, you enter in the aphotic zone, which means photic meaning light, a meaning without, so without light, where sunlight can literally not penetrate down past those levels, and it's true darkness. Have you guys ever been in true darkness before?
I went in the bathroom one time and turned the light off.
It's beautiful, right? Yes.
I also grew up with this friend that his bedroom was in the basement. The basement didn't have windows, but then within the basement was his bedroom, so it was pitch black.
Pitch
You
black.
could sleep for
Yeah.
3 days and never.
No. I think there was like an experiment where, some people like self-selected themselves to live in darkness, and they got onto like a 36-hour time scale or something like that instead of a 24-hour.
Huh.
But yeah, true darkness is unbelievable because your mind tries so hard to see something that you just can't see. It's different than like shutting your eyes and seeing nothing, because your eyes are open and they're just so they're trying so hard, so you'll see like flashes, but there's no light there. I don't know, it's really cool. Underneath this layer where light can no longer penetrate, it is darkness. And the only way to communicate, not the only way, but one of the best ways is to use light. And so, Sean, you hit it earlier. There's different lights that can be produced from these bioluminescent processes, but the wavelengths that work best in the water is blue-green. So you won't find a ton of the reds, the yellows, the oranges. You will, but they don't necessarily come up as often as blue-green, just because it literally travels best through water. I mean, it's the same reason water is blue, is because that wavelength of light passes through the easiest. Also at this depth, it's really important because a lot of animals, there's no point in having vibrant colors or patterns on their bodies, so they're usually black in color or even see-through. But either way, a lot of these things produce light in some way. Some can produce it on their own, but others, like the anglerfish, have to use this symbiotic relationship with bacteria in order to do so. Like I was mentioning earlier, every anglerfish has this like spine or this like thing coming out their head. They're called anglerfish because they represent like an angler, like a fisher person casting out of line. Well, they have this thing sticking out. It's free moving. And on the end is this sac. And in that sac is a concentration of this bacteria. There's some debate on how they get this bacteria, but there's some idea that there's like an opening in the back so the bacteria themselves can come in and out, but that might be more so for filtering out dead bacteria or whatever. It's not super widely known how they get it, but the idea is that they pick these bacteria up probably from the environment around them. But then I read another thing that was like, well, in the area that they actually do have bioluminescence, like the deeper down, because adults will usually live deeper than the young, they pick up the bacteria when they're young a little bit farther up the water column. That's where the bacteria is. So they'll pick up the bacteria there, and then they'll have this culture within their esca, which is that little sac where that holds bacteria. They'll just contain there, and hopefully, that medium is good enough to keep the bacteria going throughout their whole life. And it usually is. And what happens is, just like you said, Sean, is the anglerfish has control of how much oxygen is going into that sac, because those two, that enzyme and the other thing, I can't remember what it's called, they need a certain amount of oxygen in order to actually emit light. So the anglerfish is in control of that and actually works it. And what they do is they'll hold this thing kind of out and about, and they'll light it up, and they'll kind of move it around erratically. And the idea is it's supposed to mimic some sort of tinier, smaller animal that is thrashing around uncontrollably because it's dying or something like that. And some unsuspecting other deep sea fish will come up, or shrimp or something like that will come up trying to capture that. And little does it know, it's actually headed towards the gaping mouth of this anglerfish. Open it up, either, spear it with these long teeth that are kind of pointing in towards their mouth, or just swallow whatever that thing is whole. It's effective. I mean, in the darkness, and then all of a sudden you see this tiny little light, and there's not a lot of food down there. And so every meal you have to essentially get. Yeah, it's a gamble living at those depths, I guess. They also will use this lure to attract males to them, so they will flash them in certain patterns. I guess they probably are species specific, but it will lure the males in, hopefully quick enough before they die of starvation or whatever, to have them merge with them. Some anglerfish will also have kind of these long, kind of whisker-like things coming off most of their body that also have this sequestered bacteria that will light light up the entire kind of area around them, again, to kind of bring in things. And then that main esca will bring in whatever that prey item is to the front of their mouth. And that's it. I mean, that's the idea, that the bacteria get this safe place to live, this medium in which to grow, and every once in a while they get in a little bit of extra oxygen and are told to, hey, light up because it's time to eat. But there's some evidence that shows that this relationship is becoming less mutualistic, because the bacteria, there's an idea that the evolution of them is that eventually the bacteria will probably not be able to live outside of the anglerfish. And it's been shown that the bacteria don't actually light up outside of the anglerfish, which is quite interesting too. So they have to be inside of the anglerfish in order to actually produce light, or have the ability to. So it could be that, the bacteria produce one part and the anglerfish produces another part to do that, but it's not super known. So yeah, that's all I got for anglerfish. So
That's pretty cool. It reminds me, thinking about like deep sea creatures, the comb jelly. Have you ever seen a comb jelly?
not in person.
Well, I was canoeing in Alaska Islands, I guess. I was trying to think of the bays, but I don't know what they were. But, I mean, I was at the surface of the water, and I had a comb jelly, like, swim past me, or we canoed past it. and it was like the wildest thing. I don't know if anybody is aware of what they are, but they look like a jellyfish, but just just the top of the jellyfish. They don't have all those dangly arms or tentacles, or that's probably not the correct term for a jellyfish, but anyways, it's just like the head, I guess, almost like a see-through sea cucumber or something, with these lines that light up like a rainbow, and very
Is it lighting
cool.
up at you?
Yeah, it's probably trying to attract me.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it worked.
Yeah, I was attracted, very turned on.
Is that what Ashley does?
She just wears a
Starts
lot of
lighting up
colors
until
and
you bite her
flashes.
butt.
She's going to now.
She's looking on Amazon right now for a big old flashlight.
Like people get flash warnings at like a rave or something, like warning could cause epilepsy. It's like warning could turn you on. Like that's the new warning. How big are anglers?
They can be anywhere from the size of your fist up to 4 feet in length.
Really?
Like,
So they are pretty. They can be pretty big.
They can be pretty big. They've been around for millions of years. It's thought that they all kind of came out of, well, I think the idea is they have one evolutionary line, but there might be two, and it might just be example of co-evolution, convergent evolution in a way. But the consensus is, I can't remember, like 40 million or something?
Holy shit.
I don't want to guess and be wrong with that. Well, I guess I could.
There's high consequences to being wrong here.
92 to 61 million.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
Yeah, so about a double what I thought.
So these were eating dinosaurs.
I knew it wasn't. Yeah.
If a dinosaur were like
were.
in the deep sea.
Right. Well, I mean, some of them do kind of live in the kind of upper continental shelf area, but their gut is, when they do these studies, I mean, of course, we can't look at the gut from the fossil record usually, but especially with these guys. But usually they eat fish, shrimp, and other kind of, depending on where they live in the water column, I guess, is kind of depending on what they eat. But most, they actually, when they do these types of studies, they find that most don't have anything within their stomach. So they are very low energy fish because they just don't eat very often.
So they're not going to a rave or anything. They're pretty low.
They're not going to
low energy.
Yep. I just remember reading, the nature books when I was a kid and always being fascinated with the deep sea pages of those books and just all the different things that can live. I mean, really, we think about it, the deepest parts of the oceans are completely alien to anything that we could have up here. Mm-hmm. Life just exists in a different way when you're under thousands of atmospheres worth of pressure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you don't, the fish up where we think of have swim bladders, right? Because they need a sack of gases in order to, be able to kind of move throughout the water column. But at those depths, you don't need that because there's just so much water above you and weighing down on you that you don't need a sack of gas in order to be able to do what you need to do. Everything we know about life just kind of undoes itself when we get to those levels.
Yeah, that's how Megalodon survives down there. We just don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Very excited for when that actually comes true.
Proven, yeah.
They made 2 movies about it.
They did. Yeah, so they're on to something, right?
What movies? The Meg and Sharknado?
Meg and Meg 2.
Oh, there's 2 Megs.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah. The second one's terrible, I guess.
The second one brings out the Kraken. Or a giant squid, I will say.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I got to see it just for that.
Yeah, they fight the Meg. Zach, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go. So for mine, I want you guys to imagine that you guys are taking a beach vacation in the great territory of Puerto Rico and decide...
I lived there.
Oh, you lived there. So, yeah, Spencer, you have a great idea of what I'm talking about. And you probably might have actually seen what I'm going to talk about.
I did see what you're talking about.
I'm really jealous. I'm actually thinking about taking a trip to Puerto Rico myself just to go see this because it's beautiful. Spencer and Sean, I want you guys to imagine that you are in Puerto Rico taking a long romantic walk on the beach after dark,
together,
holding hands.
just us two.
Yeah, together. Yeah, you guys holding hands, maybe kiss a little bit.
Yep.
Or a
And
lot.
as you're walking in the sand, or a lot, yeah. As you're walking in the sand, the waves are gently lapping at your feet, and you notice the water has a faint glow to it. Out of curiosity, Spencer dips his foot in the water, and around his foot illuminates a bright but cool blue. And you guys are so excited about it that you decide to jump in the water. It starts exploding with a swirling, ghostly blue light shimmering around your entire body wherever you move. And wherever you touch, the ocean is just vibrantly shimmering this eerie, ghostly blue. But it's really bright too. It's like you can see each other's faces illuminated in the water as you're skinny dipping in the ocean.
Are we on Pandora?
I was actually going to compare it to that because it sounds pretty magical, like straight out of the Avatar movie is what I have in my notes.
I also have that in my
Nice.
notes for something else.
But yeah, this is not on Pandora. This is actually a real life on Earth phenomena that can happen on beaches all over the world, but most famously, or at least as far as I'm aware, most famously occurs in Puerto Rico. And on their tourism website, they brag that there's only 5 of these beaches in the world, with 3 of them being in Puerto Rico. Namely, the Mosquito Bay is the one that I saw the most of, at least.
I will jump in here and, in case people want to actually check this out. So Puerto Rico is made up of mostly the main island of Puerto Rico, right? There are 2 smaller islands off I guess it would be the west coast. Yeah. The west coast. The 2 main ones that I think are in control of Puerto Rico are Vieques and Culebra. Vieques has like the bioluminescent bays. You can still see the bioluminescent algae pretty much anywhere around the coast just because it's just there. But the highest concentrations of them are on that other island off of the island of Puerto Rico. Vieques is the specific one.
That's cool. I did also see mentions that you can see this in California, Tasmania, and in Wales. So I kind of think this can occur pretty much everywhere in the world along the beach because this light is actually coming from a bioluminescent dinoflagellate, or as you might call them, algae. This algae is in the water and it grows a bright, brilliant blue when physically disturbed by waves or somebody swimming. These dinoflagellates they're really hard to see, maybe even impossible to see with the naked eye, as they are single-celled organisms, but they're actually the largest single-celled organisms that we know about today. So that's kind of cool. And the reason I say they could potentially happen pretty much anywhere on the beach or like anywhere in the world is that the algae can undergo what's called an algal bloom, where the dinoflagellate population just explodes to the point where we can see their bioluminescence ourselves. And especially when the populations are really big, that's when you can jump in the ocean and it's just like, I don't know, lighting up around you like you're in a movie. The light that we're seeing, it's not just a magical experience for us. It's actually extremely costly for the algae to produce. There has to be some sort of evolutionary advantage to it, right? Do you guys have any idea what that evolutionary advantage might be?
I think I have an idea.
The advantage of lighting up?
Yes.
What
What is the evolutionary advantage for them to be lighting up? Because it takes a lot of energy to produce the luciferin and luciferase to, make the chemical reaction and light up, right? And that takes a lot out of a single-celled organism. So there's got to be some reason they're doing it.
I think I know. Is it to attract larger fish in to eat the fish that would be eating them?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so it's actually thought to be a defensive mechanism. Because these organisms are single-celled and so small, they're at the bottom of the food chain, meaning that predators to them are things like shrimp. Things that we eat and most other fish in the ocean eat. I don't know if you've ever seen like a video or anything of shrimp feeding, but they kind of just like wave their arms in the air or in the water, just grab stuff, they just shove it in their mouth. And by doing this, they're kind of disturbing the water around them. It's that disturbance that causes the algae to light up. And in doing so, it catches the eye of a bigger fish that can come eat the shrimp that's eating the algae, thereby eliminating the threat. So I think that's the theory behind it, but I don't know if it's necessarily proven or not, but that's just kind of the idea.
So if you think about it like that, and you're jumping around splashing in it, it's almost like the dinoflagellates are saying, hey, someone help, come eat this, and it's you're standing in it, and
exactly,
and it's trying to like bring in reinforcements to come eat you. That's pretty cool.
And then the Meg comes out of the Marianas Trench, and we end up with a
Kraken
blockbuster
riding it.
Yep. And eats your ass.
Yeah,
just like Sean does.
Yeah.
That came out wrong. I didn't. Yeah.
I would wonder, like, at what point, in this evolutionary arms race, would the shrimp be like, oh, hey, there's the light. Let me go towards it. I'm going to eat it because it's lighting up, telling me where it's at.
Or would the shrimp avoid the light because it knows that if it goes over there, it's more likely to get spotted?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to what direction that will take. What is the advantage for the shrimp in this situation?
I think there is no advantage.
At what point do sharks just learn that when there's a bunch of light, it's some dummy on a beach playing in the water and a free snack?
Yeah. I don't know how often these algal blooms happen where you could see all of the light. So it might not be something that a larger fish would ever evolve to look for. You know what I mean? If it doesn't happen all the time and it's not a consistent sign of food, they might not evolve to it. But at a small scale, like a shrimp, it could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder if as we get more and more of these algae blooms that happen within our freshwater lakes and stuff like that, and within the oceans as well, are we going to have more and more of these algae blooms of bioluminescent algae? And are we going to see it more? And then at that point, will that change the evolutionary arms race for these things?
Oh, possibly. That's actually a good idea.
Especially
with warmer ocean temperatures, and I could see it happening.
Are these the type of algae blooms that are like toxic?
I think they're different.
Okay.
It's a different species. They're not producing chemicals that are toxic to us, at least that I know of. Okay. Those are different algae that do
some of them are also toxic to like dogs, but not us. So I was just curious.
Yeah, I was actually backpacking in Oregon one time, and there was signs like, "Don't go swimming in this lake with your dog," because there was apparently a big algal bloom in some alpine lake of all places. And you couldn't go swimming because you would die.
Well, would you die or just your dog? Because I imagine like it's not hurting your skin unless you ingest it.
Yeah, it's probably just toxic to ingest. The sign said don't go swimming, so I didn't go swimming.
The only ones that I want to see are the light up ones. I did see this when I was in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I want to hear a first-hand experience of this.
Well, it wasn't as exciting as, you see in like the tourist videos and, the advertisements and stuff like that. I think in general, it's not as bright as it's made out to be in those advertisements or in those photos, just because the light is pretty dim. And even when you have a bunch of them, it's still pretty dim. So, they're using exposures and, color enhancement and stuff like that to make it seem a little bit brighter than it actually is. But you can still see it. So I went out to Culebra, but we didn't go to Vieques when I lived there. But even on the mainland, main island, not mainland, but on the main island, you can still see it. If you go to the beach at night, like as the waves kind of crash in, you can see like little flashes of blue that happen. It wasn't like if you started walking on the water, it would just be this brilliant color that would just kind of envelop you and make you feel like you're in a magical fairyland, but you could still see it. It was still pretty cool. Definitely worth going to see at some point. If you can kind of figure out when a big algae bloom is going to happen. I don't know. There's probably people that can track that and stuff like that. I wouldn't be able to tell you. A lot of people are disappointed when they go and see it because they're like, this wasn't like what it was in the brochure. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's just nature.
Yeah, I did see on their tourism website, like, to call ahead, and they do have people that track it, and they're like, make sure it's above 30% or something. I don't know 30% of what, but that's what it says. Right. Call ahead and concentration and see if it's actually happening.
Right. It's super cool. Just even knowing that it exists, and like I was still fascinated when it was just kind of like tiny little flashes that you could see like in the waves, not not when you're enveloped in it or whatever, but still very cool. So, but I will say, when we were living in Puerto Rico, so we were doing research up in the rainforest. There were some other bioluminescent organisms that I won't go into, to give away for Sean's stuff. Every night we were doing nocturnal research. And so every night we'd have to acclimate ourselves, but also the environment around us, because, we wanted creatures to come out, but we were also like using headlamps and stuff. So we'd spend 5 minutes with our headlights off before each survey. And we just have to sit there quiet and in the dark and just put a timer on. And one time we're all kind of sitting there in the dark, and, as our eyes adjust, it, takes in more and more light. All of us were kind of like shifting around, and you could kind of tell that everybody was like looking at this one little area. And then I think eventually somebody's like, do you guys see that on the ground? And everybody else is like, yeah, okay, we're not going crazy. What is that? And we all like bent down really close, and it was just the tiniest little mushroom I've ever seen. Like perfect, little capped mushroom, but it was glowing. It was just perfectly lit up. It was unbelievably cool. I mean, who knows what species it was? It could have been a new species that no one's ever seen, because we were on the top of the mountain. But we were all just like sat there and like laid down on the ground just to look at this. I mean, this thing was probably 3 millimeters tall. Like, that's how small it was. But the light that it was emitting was strong enough that we could all see it just from sitting there. So pretty cool.
That is
definitely
cool.
Recommend a trip to Puerto Rico at some point in your life.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of bioluminescent fungi out there. I remember I took a forest pathology class, and we had to grow our own oyster mushrooms. So we did that for a couple months, I think. And then at the end of the semester, when they were fully grown, the professor took us into a classroom where he had set all of the mushrooms up, and he'd placed them on tables and stuff. And then he didn't tell us what was about to happen. He just like, okay, everybody in. And he closes the door, turns the light off. And then it was just like, boom, all of these mushrooms were glowing in the dark. And it was really cool.
It's pretty cool.
I didn't know blue oysters did that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
I know a lot of fungi do glow, but I don't know why they glow. What's the point of fungus glowing?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
So people who are acclimating to the dark can sit there in amazement and watch them. I don't know.
That's exactly
Convenient night lights.
Yeah, lights.
Nature's night lights. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want every animal scared at night.
Anyways, that's all I got on algae.
So I chose to talk about fireflies for my bioluminescent organism.
Woo! Wait, what is a firefly?
I've never seen one.
Lightning bug? Is that what you guys
call
them?
lightning bug. Yeah. Of course, lightning bug is so much better. A firefly? They're not fire or fly.
But they're also not a bug.
Or lightning.
Yeah. But I'll get to that. I cover that. Don't you worry. But I realize this is probably one of the first organisms a lot of people may see that have bioluminescence, but I think I've been overlooking them for so long as somewhat of a naturalist and an entomologist. And now it's like this new obsession for me, to be honest, and it was sparked by a recent trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. My wife and I went camping there, joined a couple other entomologists. Dr. Dora was one, if you remember her from our previous episode, as well as another entomologist Zach and Spencer went to school with. Her name is Haley. It was a good time. Shout out to Haley and Dr. Dora. Haley's also a doctor, isn't she?
Yeah,
Yes.
Dr.
So
Haley
Dr.
and
Haley
Dr.
and
Dora.
Dr. Haley, there we go. We were attempting to find some early emerged synchronous fireflies. These fireflies all light up, you may have guessed it, in sync, not the band, with each other. Imagine dozens, if not hundreds, of these insects lighting up, blinking their lights at the same time. There's a lottery every year to see them in the Smokies, which takes place this year in June, so we were a bit early for them, unfortunately, but we did see another species known as the blue ghosts. These fireflies turn on their lights for about 4 seconds or longer and kind of fly near the ground or the forest floor vegetation. They look like little spirit balls you'd see in an anime or cartoon, so I see how they got their name. Plus, we were right by a graveyard, so a little spooky. Their light isn't exactly blue, maybe just a hint of it, but I would really love to compare them to another species to see how blue they are, if any, compared to other fireflies. I was fascinated by these creatures and began looking into all fireflies in general just to know more, and so I would like to share a bit of what I've learned so far. What is a firefly? Are they the same as a lightning bug? Fireflies, lightning bugs, and glowworms, with some exception to the glowworm part, are all common names for beetles in the Lampyridae family. There are over 2,000 species and are on every continent except Antarctica. Different cultures have different names for them, but I found the German word for them, Leuchtkaffer, to be more accurate than the English common name, since this means light beetle, which that's what it is and does. Lightning bug isn't really accurate since it's not in the true bug order, and they aren't flies, so fireflies is not great either. But Leuchtkoffer, that's what I'm going to call them now. Got to represent my ancestors, I guess, somehow. There are around 125 species in North America alone, and I will try and focus on some of these so I don't make my talk 5 hours long or more. Most people here in the U.S. think of fireflies as only an eastern insect, something you see in the Midwest or in the Appalachians onwards towards the East Coast. But they are west of the Rockies, just not as popular and may not even light up at all. More on that topic later, though.
I want to break into this.
Of course.
This is the story. This has got to do with what you just said. So I grew up in Colorado along the Front Range where there are no fireflies. I don't know at what point you might be able to find them. If you can find them, at least the light, the species that light up, if they begin, maybe Kansas or Nebraska or whatever. But where I grew up, you can't find them. So the only places that we really saw them were, our trips out to Ohio and Iowa, where I was just obsessed. Oh my God, I was just so obsessed. And I remember asking my mom why we didn't have these back home. And in the true 90s fashion, your parent, when they don't know something, just makes something up. And my mom was like, well, it's because we live at a higher at a higher elevation. Messed that up twice. And so they get nosebleeds. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that makes so much sense. One of my good friends always got nosebleeds, is mostly because of the dry air, but I didn't know that until later, I guess. So I was like, oh my God, Taylor gets nosebleeds. That, we do live at a higher elevation than Ohio or Iowa. So that makes perfect sense. Okay, I believe that. I believe that for much of my childhood. And then I was like, oh wait, they don't even have noses.
Sorry, Spencer, but I have beef with your claims. There are people in Fort Collins that lead volunteers that lead guided firefly walks in June and July.
Well, there we go. See,
you just have to know the right people and know where to go.
Yeah, I guess.
Or maybe they're just looking for him and they're just not finding it.
They never find him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure they are there. Yeah. But I grew up in the suburbs. I mean, we were lucky if we got actual flies, flying around. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
they must just be harder to find. You're definitely not going to see many in the suburbs or urban areas, but
right.
they do prefer temperate, humid environments, which means they do thrive more in the Midwest and eastern states. Supposedly, lightning bug is a more southern states term, while firefly is more northern. I think I called them both my whole life, and I grew up in Indiana. Did you guys call them differently? You said lightning bug, but the internet says that's a southern term. I don't know.
I don't know. I always knew it was lightning bugs.
Okay.
I don't know. I was listening
So-
to another podcast called Ologies, and they had a firefly expert on there. And there was like a third name for, I want to say it was like North Carolina, where they call, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was very strange. It was like cattywampuses or something.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's something super weird.
I don't know if I found that.
Okay.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was not that, but like, this is like all I can think of off the top of my head. It was just something like, what the hell? Like, who would say that?
Well, the term glowworm is a bit more interesting as far as what it means. To be in the family Lampyridae, the larvae of these beetles must have the ability to glow, and the adults must have a hard head shield called a pronotum that covers the head entirely. There are other requirements, but these are the main two that I want to discuss. So with that being said, all firefly larvae are called glowworms since the larva form is worm-like and, well, glows. But there is more. Some species of fireflies have females that are flightless and are larva-like, and they call these like their larval forms. These females glow regardless if their male partners have the ability or not, and these are also called glowworms or glowworm fireflies. To add to this glowworm topic, there also exists railroad worms, which are often called glowworms since the larva of this beetle also has bioluminescent capabilities and lights up along the sides of their abdomen like windows on a train car. These beetles are not in the firefly family, but instead the Phingodidae. I probably butchered that family. I don't think they have the full pronotum head over the true fireflies have as adults. And of course, you can't talk about glowworms without some of the most famous glowworms in the world being brought up. I'm talking about the Waitomo, New Zealand cave glowworms. They do exist in other caves in New Zealand, such as the cave in Te Anau, which I was lucky enough to have experienced firsthand. I should note they are not exclusive to caves either, and can be found outside of them in numerous locations as well, but the cave experiences just feel like you're in another world, something out of, you named it, Avatar. These glowworms are actually fungus gnat larvae using their light-producing capabilities to catch prey. Gnats are flies, so actually in a completely different scientific order from fireflies and all other beetles, so not even closely related, but they do have one relative in North America that glows as well. I have not seen them, but the internet suggests they are located around North Carolina, so I might have to go find them sometime.
Expedition time.
Yeah.
I found
So
the weird name for
what is it?
for fireflies. Peeny-wallies.
Interesting.
That's so weird.
And apparently this is a term used in Jamaica,
Not North Carolina.
not North Carolina.
That's nice.
Close enough.
Yeah. We have this glowworm thing figured out, more or less. Back to fireflies. From spring to summer and into fall, if you are in the right area, you may have a light show going on in your backyard every night as long as the weather permits, and if you live in an area that certain species of fireflies live. It is unlikely you will have one species lighting up your backyard that entire time, and it will actually be a conglomerate of multiple species. Two big external abiotic factors that play a role in determining when fireflies light up are the degree days and photoperiod. Degree days are a way to measure how relatively warm or cool a season has been. A degree day is a measurement of heat unit accumulation over time. And I'm sure you guys are well aware of what these are. Insect growth development relies on temperatures. You can predict emergence of adults based on the degree days the eggs or the larvae have experienced. Photoperiod is just how much light and dark there is in a day, and this also influences firefly activity. I'm going to quote this book that I've been reading by Lynn Frierson Faust. Each species flashes and/or flies in a specific habitat at a specific time of the year, at a specific time of evening or day, and even at a certain distance off the ground and in a certain manner of flight. So there's a lot more going on than meets the eye initially. You could be late to a firefly show by a month or even an hour and miss the entire thing. You may be 200 feet in the wrong direction and see nothing. So this is kind of what you're talking about, Spencer, where you didn't know they were in Colorado, but you just, go over the hill and hike through,
And there they are.
There they are.
Well, my mom lied about that too, I guess.
Never trust your parents.
But why do fireflies light up? The first answer is that it is a mating call. Many insects rely on chemical cues or pheromones to find each other and make the future generation. Fireflies have different tactics. Well, most of them. These patterns of light we see are a way for fireflies to locate each other to mate. The males are flying about signaling to any females in the area, "Hey, look at me. I have those genetics you want, baby." When a female of the same species sees this and likes the show, she signals back to the male to come find her. She's usually on the ground or on vegetation observing the show these males put on. Each species has their own call so they can find a proper mate. Some may blink their light once a second, some may turn it on for 4 or more and then turn it off. Others will turn it on for a whole second and fly in the shape of a letter J. And the list goes on and on. These light shows are so unique and identifiable, the trained eye can identify a species just by the light show alone. I have tried learning this. Definitely need more practice, though, because it is not easy. Once they mate, the female will lay eggs, and after roughly 3 weeks, they'll hatch into larvae. I found it interesting, though, that some species, the females will actually guard the eggs until they hatch. Most of the firefly's life is spent as a larva. This stage, at a minimum, can take about a year, but can even take 2 to 3 if the conditions are not met for the larva to develop into a pupa. The pupa stage is also around 3 weeks long, and then the adults are only around for about 3 to 4. A lot of North American species are subterranean or arboreal, but there are some that are aquatic to semi-aquatic. So this kind of counters what Zach said earlier about there not being any aquatic bioluminescent in freshwater, because these are ranging from like mangroves to like fully freshwater ecosystems. But maybe because they're like semi-aquatic, they aren't really like counting it. But these are just the larvae. Right. These glowworms use their light to communicate to potential predators that they taste bad. Adults also taste bad, and if you ever caught them as a kid or adult and accidentally smashed them and noticed like a kind of funky smell, this is why. The chemicals that produce this bitterness and awful smell are named, and I shit you not, lucibufagins. And like in the phonetics, it literally has it spaced out Lucy, like the name, boof, agains. And it was named by this guy, Tom Eisner, that knew toads had defensive chemicals called bufadienolides, and so he added Lucy at the beginning of it for light, and voila, lucibufagins. So fireflies light up to find mates and tell others they taste bad, but is that it? Of course not. The genus Photurus has evolved to mimic light patterns of different species. I should say the females in particular can mimic the light communication of the females from other species to attract males to her. This is not for mating, but for eating.
Zach, do you ever, sorry to jump in. Do you remember reading this article in Ecology?
I think so.
This was one of the few papers I actually remember reading because that class was so much reading.
It was all
reading.
Oh
my God. It was all reading. But I remember reading this one, and I was just, it was like reading a novel. This paper we read on this specific genus. But anyway, continue.
Photurus is a crazy genus. The males think they're about to get lucky when instead they end up becoming this midnight snack. These these females, often referred to as femme fatales in this genus, have more of a hunchback posture and longer legs, and this probably just helps them grab onto other fireflies. These femme fatales are also known for eating the males of their own species sometimes, so are kind of mean. Species within this genus
Jerks.
make up yeah. Species within this genus make up possible species complexes where the fireflies look similar or behave similarly, and it's hard to determine the differences between them, and they end up getting lumped together whether or not they're actually the same species. Photurus versicolor is one possible complex that's pretty common across the eastern states, where all members display this same flash but can vary in appearance. And the male reproductive organ is also the same for all in this complex, which you guys may know. The male repro organ in insects is often the holy grail in identifying species. More research needs to be done to further unravel this mystery, but I thought it was, cool that maybe this firefly is just really adaptive, and it's like taking its light abilities to the next level of bringing in prey as well as communication. And I also read that this genus Photurus obtained those lucibufigans through consumption of other fireflies. My latest here's a cool bug fact I've been telling people is that I've been asking them if they know that there's fireflies whose adults do not glow. Most times people say no. Photinus indictus is a species of lanternless firefly commonly known as the silent firefly in northern states. These are day active and rely on the more classic pheromones that beetles and other insects use for communication when locating a mate rather than the light that fireflies are known for. It is speculated that these fireflies lost their abilities to light up as an evolutionary response to the Photurus genus species. A good way of, not wanting to get eaten when looking for a mate is just stop talking to the ladies that are lighting up.
That's what I do. I just stop talking to girls.
Talk to dudes instead.
Go on romantic walks along the beach.
With Spencer, yes. I could talk about fireflies for a long time, but I'll wrap it up with this. Like many other insects, firefly populations have dropped. Some are more vulnerable than others based on their lifestyle. For example, the blue ghost I mentioned at the beginning, their females do not fly, so they do not disperse far, if at all. You can return to the same place every year in the Smokies and see these blue ghosts, if the conditions are right. But if that small section of forest was removed for some reason, a new campground is needed, etc., then that population would be all but wiped out. Other factors that play a role in their demise include artificial lighting, earth moving, widespread development, pesticides, herbicides, biological controls, and just general pollution that all have an impact on all the stages of a firefly's life. As an ambassador for the Xerces Society, I couldn't pass on an opportunity to discuss a bit of invertebrate conservation. So if you have a yard and see fireflies seasonally, try to reduce the amount of outdoor lighting. Decorative lighting isn't necessary, folks. These fireflies are much more beautiful to look at than your silly garden gnome.
Yeah.
And
I feel like
also,
you're targeting somebody with that.
There's a few people I work with that could, listen to this, but they're not going to. That's fine. Also, eliminate or reduce the amount of pesticides you use in your own lawn. Having some wild areas of your yard that you don't do anything to would also help these insects as well as countless others. So there's my brief spiel on helping protect these awesome creatures.
Hell yeah.
I'm just in that we should just eliminate as much unnecessary light pollution as possible.
Oh, yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
I think it's such a waste.
In accordance for this recording that we're doing right now for bioluminescence, I saw a lot of ideas for bioengineering where they were trying to increase the amount of light at night by injecting the genes necessary to produce bioluminescence into trees, and the trees would act as light posts.
Wow.
And light up the night.
Oh, I've heard of those things. I don't think it's there's no actual incentive for that. monetarily.
I mean, it would be free light, right? Like you wouldn't have to pay for electricity.
Yeah, but do you know how expensive it is just to get to the point where you could grow a tree that can do that when you could just put up a LED light for $200?
Well, then we wouldn't be wasting fossil fuels. We'd be sequestering carbon.
How
true.
concentrated would that have to be? Because I mean, fireflies, they light up, but the light is not illuminating backyards.
I mean, some of the mushrooms and stuff that glow, people say you can read by those mushrooms.
Oh.
So
yeah, I mean,
I can't imagine that a tree would light up as much as a light post, but
yeah,
it's a neat idea.
Enough. Yeah.
I think it's a neat idea, and that's where it ends.
Oh, I believe, yeah, same thing. Do I want to see a light up tree? Of course.
Yeah, that'd be freaking sweet.
Back to Avatar again.
Yeah.
Back to Avatar. Yeah.
Cool. On that note, though, there are some woods that fluoresce under UV lights. So, like, the difference between luminesce and fluoresce is like things that bioluminesce can light up on their own, but things that are fluorescent, they glow under a black light. Honey locust and black locust both glow like a yellow under a black light. Interesting side note.
Yeah.
I want to use it to make something. I just don't know what yet.
Well, you're gonna have to put black lights everywhere.
I'm gonna have a rave
That might
party.
be a bad idea.
Yeah, don't want to put black lights up in too many places.
But yeah, that was a cool episode. I like bioluminescence a lot, and I think next year we should actually try to do the Firefly adventure together. Or we don't even need to win the lottery. We know where to go now.
Oh, right. So we can just go.
Do you need to like have a lottery ticket to get in? Like,
I think the
for them
lottery
to allow
ticket
you into the area.
No. I think the lottery ticket gives you a tour. It provides you with a tour to get to like. I mean, most people aren't going to know where to go, and two, maybe it like guarantees you a campsite there. But like, the people camping there aren't only the people with lottery tickets, and that doesn't stop us from camping at any other campground, even if that campground's full in the Smokies. Yeah, and just parking and walking to where we saw these fireflies. And I guess the Blue Ghost are active during the same time as the Synchronous, so you get like a dual show.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I won't be teaching next year, probably, so.
Me either.
I'm down. Yeah. I say let's do it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, that's great. I did look up the fan who gave us a shout out.
Oh, yes.
Let me pull it back up here. Jabari. Does anybody know somebody who might use that name?
No.
I can't see the picture. I don't know if it's a meme picture or not, but they said, seems like it's been years. #1 listener, by the way. Well, shout out to you, Jabari, on Spotify. Thanks for listening. And
what episode was that comment on?
the most recent one, the sloths and poopy moms.
Oh, really?
So,
Woo! Shout out Jabari. How?
yeah, I was gonna say we have, I think, 4 new styles of stickers coming out. So yeah, if you want a sticker, you're more than welcome to send us a few bucks, or if you really know us, we'll just send you one, or I don't know, whatever. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we just want some cool stickers out there, and my brother was nice enough to design some for us, and I think they look great. So
yes, they do. Appreciate it.
When they officially come out, we'll let everybody know.
Cool.
But I think with that, any other announcements?
I think that's it.
Okay, we'll sign off. How?
How?